Hello to all. Welcome to Books and Us, the podcast about learning about new ideas and getting inspiration from books. I'm Ranjit Monga, and as you know, every week I take up books in the non-fiction category, from which we can get a wealth of knowledge and information. The interviews conducted on this podcast are also available on the news website www.globalbihari.com. So if you want to read about them, just go to the website and search under my name or the column, which is called Literary Speaking.
मोहे सुन सुन आवे आसी संत पानी में आसी. And this song Kabir says, Mohe sun sun aave hasi, pani mein meen piyasi. I laugh when I hear that the fish is thirsty in water, meaning we are surrounded by fulfillment. Still, we feel we are lacking. There is something missing, and we keep looking for this thing.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to episode 10 of the podcast Books and Us. This is a very special episode because it is the 10th episode. And thank you for all your wishes for achieving this milestone. Today, also, I'm going to bring an interesting topic to the fore, and that is about Kabir. Kabir, as you all may be knowing, was a mystic, is considered a saint. He was a poet, and many say he was also a social reformer. And how that is possible, we are going to learn today from the author of the book, Drunk on Love, The Life, Vision, and Songs of Kabir, authored by Vipul Rikhi and published by Harper Collins. Vipul, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Ranjit. Pleasure to be here.
Okay, as some of you may be knowing, Vipul is himself a singer, poet, and storyteller who is immersed in the oral traditions of a country. And his interest, besides Kabir, also includes other Bhakti and Sufi saints. He has been associated with the Kabir project, which is an elaborate and ambitious effort to compile and throw some light on these oral traditions of a country. Vipul has also authored 5 other books relating to oral traditions of song. So, Vipul, what is the perspective this book on Kabir puts forward?
Well, Ranjit, this book brings forth the Kabir, which the people of the country have relate to and which they have created, which they have preserved for over 500 years. What the Kabir that I encountered was through songs. It was not through books. And the songs that people sing and how they relate to Kabir in their daily lives as a friend, and how they talk about Kabir and how they relate to his philosophy and his poetry. So this and how they relate to his life through legends. So this book brings together all these things to create a picture of Kabir as he's alive today.
And actually, my interest in Kabir started because I remember many years ago in 2007, I had gone to this tiger sanctuary called Bandhavgarh. And there, high up in the mountains, there were some rock cut caves, and we were asking a guide, what are these caves for? And they said that this is a place visited a lot by Kabir Panthis. And they come here and they have an annual fair. And I was wondering that who are these Kabir Panthis? And I always thought it was a spiritual tradition. But when I came across your book and I learned that he was much more. So do you relate to that, the spiritual Kabir or the Kabir who has written so many songs on social reform? What is it that you learned in your studies and in your when you followed his songs?
Yeah, we see the thing is that we try to divide and label with a tendency that Kabir is either a spiritual seeker or a saint or a social reformer or this or that. So this is the tendency of the mind, which is to divide things and categorize them and put them in separate corners. And which is exactly what Kabir challenges in his poetry. So he says there are no separations. So When he sings or he speaks, the social aspect and the spiritual aspect are intimately connected. They are not divorced from each other. They are not separate. So in his poetry, he often criticizes both Hindu priests, the Pandits, and the Muslim priests, the Mullahs, and the ritualism and the empty sort of orthodoxy, and the caste kind of hierarchies and so on. He criticizes all of this. But the basis on which he criticizes all of this is by saying that there is only one truth and there is only one humanity. And that is not an abstract idea that he's saying. He says that you can experience it in your own body, this truth. He says, सब आया एक ही घाट से उतरा एक ही बाट बीच में दुविधा पड़ गई तासे हुए बारह बाट. Meaning we all come from one place and we all land in the same place. But there is a veil of delusion, this duality, this need to separate things, which creates these endless, divisions. So the spiritual and the social are not separate at all. It's a holistic approach that Kabir espouses.
So before we go into the spiritual aspect, I just want you to tell the viewers, to tell the listeners that, how this tradition has survived for 500 years and what is in it that it is carried on, as you say in the book, in the hinterlands, in rural areas, in semi-rural areas, and why people follow him so much?
Yeah, that's a very good question. The Kabir didn't read or write. Him in his own words, he says, "Masi kagaj chuo nahi, kalam gayo nahi haath." Never held a pen or paper in my hand. Char jogara mahat mukh se janai baat. He spoke the wisdom of all four ages with his tongue, with his mouth. So it's an oral tradition. He himself didn't write. There are no written compilations till much later, which appear, and they are also partial. But the oral tradition is much vaster. There are endless number of songs, and this tradition has survived because people sing these songs and people listen to these songs. So people gather together. It's a centuries old tradition of satsang or jagran, where people gather together in the night in the village chopal or at someone's house and they sing after the day's work is done. So they're not specialized singers who are only singing, though there are also those. But there are also ordinary people who are farmers or fruit sellers who are gathering at night to sing and to celebrate this wisdom, and it passes on from generation to generation. So that's how it has survived for over 500 years, and it's not dependent on written, texts or compilations which appeared much later. And it's a very strong tradition because it's very fulfilling when you participate in these gatherings, and there is no division between performer and audience, because everyone is performer and everyone is audience, and you sing together. That energy and that the strength that it brings, it's quite remarkable, and that is why it has survived for so long.
And what is amazing is that it has survived away from all the media glare. We have so much media in our country, which is always hungry for new things, for new stories. But something like this, I have never really come across, in the media, in all my years in the media.
Yeah, that's true. Even when I first heard this tradition in 2008, I'd never heard about it before. I didn't know it existed. And because it's been largely a rural tradition, it survives more in rural areas, in the villages, and now it has come into the cities, and more urban folk are waking up to it. But yeah, in the cities we have lost touch with a lot of our roots, because we are sort of cut off from our own traditions, and we follow different kinds of whatever the media feeds us.
You have also woven in or tried to tell the historical facts about Kabir's life, of which I believe, and I learned from your book, is there is not much written record about him. So, who was Kabir the person?
Yeah, this is it's a very interesting question because there is no one answer to this. There is, as you said, there are no historical records from that time. People didn't write histories or biographies in the way we write histories and biographies now. So there are no biographies and histories immediately. So some appear after 100 years or decades later, and then they are in the tradition of hagiography, meaning celebrating the life of a saint. So they appear in terms of legends. A lot of legends are there, stories are there, which you can't necessarily take as historical record. So, but Kabir survives, Kabir the person survives through these legends only. So we have only these legends now. And the picture that these legends paint is of someone who has a lot of conviction and confidence in his own experience and what he's saying. And he's able to stand up to a lot of opposition and persecution from, the power brokers of that time. And that is a very inspiring sort of vision for ordinary people
Even
who
now,
have,
I
yes,
think.
exactly, especially now, at any time, I think it's the same. Power, is always hungry for more power, and then there is resistance. So there are always people who resist, and there are always people who want to oppress.
And there is also, confusion about who he was, or what was his birth like, and even the dates in which he was born and he died. I believe it was somewhere in the late 14th
15.
century to early 15th century, right? Or mid 15th
Yes.
century. Yeah.
Yeah, so different historians have different dates. Kabir Panthis have a different date. So different people prefer different dates. The Kabir Panthis have a very long lifespan of over 120 years,
100
I think.
years.
Historians have two different dates that they prefer, different historians. So there is no clear answer to this. And I think it's okay also. I mean, what will we get actually by knowing the exact date? It doesn't matter. If you really look at it in perspective, it really doesn't matter, because what he's saying is much more important.
Yeah,
And
you say in the first chapter that it's not important who was Kabir, but
yeah,
we should learn who is Kabir.
exactly. And what is he saying to us today? What is he telling us today?
Mm. So, and you also say some very interesting thing that the tradition has also survived because many people have added their own verses or their own poems and their own dohas, and it has become like a stream. And sometimes you can't even identify, which poem was Kabir's and which is not.
Yes, exactly. So that is also another reason why the tradition is so vibrant, because it's alive, it's living, it's not a dead tradition. So people have added verses to the tradition, and in the end, they say, Kahe Kabir Suno Bhai Sadhu. And if the poem is powerful enough, it will become a Kabir poem if people start to sing it, become a Kabir song. And I think that's a good thing, because it's a democratic tradition. It's not, there is one author who is sitting in his ivory tower, and everyone else has to then just bow down to this figure. It's not like that at all, because people relate to Kabir as a friend, and they also say often that in the moment that I am singing, I am also Kabir. Hum bhi Kabir hain. And that is the power of this sort of democratic approach, that this truth which Kabir himself points to a lot. He says this truth belongs to all of us. It's part of all of us. It's in all our bodies, and we only have to come within to access the power of this truth. And this message is very powerful, because it frees you from religious scriptures, from temples, mosques, and other authorities.
Do you also relate to Kabir in the same way, or I mean, what's your connection? Is it spiritual? Is it the social aspect, or is it all together?
Yeah, I mean, I totally relate to him only in this way. So I don't treat Kabir as, a subject that I'm studying. Not at all. That's an academic approach, which is fine, but that's not my approach. It's not an academic topic or subject or oriented approach, because I sing Kabir. And the moment you sing Kabir or you listen to Kabir, it becomes something else. It doesn't remain a subject to study, something separate from you. You have to immerse in it, like in a river or a stream. And by immersion is a different way of knowing. Knowledge is also very interesting. We've constructed knowledge as something which is outside ourselves, through which you can access through books or now videos or whatever it is, outside material, educational material. That is one way of knowing. But another way of knowing is immersing in something. And when you immerse in something, you know a subject from the inside. So when you sing Kabir, you know Kabir from the inside, from the inside out, rather than from the outside.
Yeah. And Kabir also says that it is anubhav or
Yes,
experience which will give you the knowledge.
exactly. Yes.
So can you lay out some tenets of this knowledge which Kabir propagated? I read some very interesting concepts about genie, the subtle aspects of living, and according to him, everything else is contained in that. It's on a subtle plane.
Yes. Yes. For example, he says, हाँ कहूँ तो है नहीं, ना भी कहो नहीं जाए, हाँ और ना के बीच में मेरा सद्गुरु रहा समाए. Meaning the truth lives between yes and no, right and wrong, right and left, all these dualities between black and white. So the tendency of the human mind is to divide things into black and white because those are easy answers. Something is good, something is bad, something is evil, and something is good, etc. But Kabir is saying that it's more subtle than that. It's not so simple. Because what we do when we divide things in black and white is we construct enemies. And when we are constructing enemies, the other, we are othering others, then we are always at war with each other. We are always fighting. And that won't bring people together. That won't also bring you closer to yourself. So that's why he points to this subtle truth. And for example, his knowledge, what he says about knowledge in one of his most famous dohas, says पोथी पढ़ पढ़ जग मुआ पंडित भया ना कोई ढाई आखर प्रेम का पढ़े सो पंडित होए. So knowledge doesn't lie in scriptures or in books or in reading. He says love is knowledge. And if you can understand love, this dimension of love, then you will know what it means to be alive, what it means to relate, what it means to be a human being. And these are the fundamental questions that we need to begin with. कहाँ से आया, कहाँ जाओगे? खबर करो अपने तन की. Where have you come from? Where are you going? Look for answers in your own body. So Kabir always invites us back to our own body, our own self. Look into our own self. And then we can touch this subtle dimension, which he also calls love.
The title of the book is also Drunk on Love. So is that the most effective or important concept of Kabir?
It's the most profound concept and the most important one, for sure. Yes. There are two things he harps on a lot. One is death and one is love. So there are a lot of songs about death also, because he keeps reminding us of our impermanence and that we are going to die. And therefore, and we don't know when we are going to die. So we have only this moment. We plan, we make 10-year plans, 20-year plans, and 30-year plans and we live as if we are immortal. But that's not the truth. And, any one of us could die tomorrow. So the reason he does that is to bring us to this present moment, to remember to be in this moment and to bring awareness to this moment, because this is the most important moment. And he invokes the power of love as the force that can take us beyond this death, this endless death, and this endless dying. He says, if there is something which will take us beyond this strife, this division, this separation that we all experience, this conflict, endless conflict, wars, etc., which we experience at a personal level, at a global level, love is the only dimension that can take us there. But to get to love, it's very paradoxical. You have to die to yourself. That means you have to die to your pride, you have to die to your ego. And that is when you can taste this nectar of love. He says, Chakho chahe prem ras, राखो चाहे मान, दो खड़ग और एक म्यान, देखा सुना नहीं कान. Either taste the wine of love, the nectar of love, or keep your pride. You can't have both. Like you can't have two swords in one sheath.
And he also talks about dying before death, which is something very beautiful. I learned over there that you let go of all your attachments, before your time comes.
Yes, it also actually it works in more ways than one, because it also enables you to enjoy the present moment more. If we can die to ourselves, which is to die to our ego, our attachments, our clingings, our cravings, our desires and aversions and fears and all that whole universe of the ego, then even this present moment becomes more available to us. So not only does it make the rest of the life more beautiful, but also this present moment, the ability to really relate to other people, to really enjoy the beauty of nature, all these simple things, they become more alive if we can get out of our minds and be in this moment. So this dying before death actually is for life. It's in order to live. We live only when we die to ourselves. That's what he says.
And the truth is contained in one's body. That's what he says. So how does one get to it?
Yeah. So he gives many hints. First of all, he keeps saying, "Go into your own body, look into yourself, look within." That's one thing he keeps saying. Start looking inside yourself. Then he says another thing that he says often is about the breath, and anchoring in the breath, and anchoring in a practice like Ajapa Jap. He often mentions Ajapa Jap, which is the practice of breath and mantra, internal, or different kinds of meditation, and also not trusting the mind. And so he also advises not to trust the mind too much, because the mind is always giving you this opinion or that opinion. So the mind is not stable. If we just look at our own self for a minute and sit with ourselves for even half a minute, we can see that the mind is not stable at all. It keeps running, can't stay on one subject. But the body is stable because it is always anchored in the present. The body with the breath is always anchored in the present moment. So when we come into the body and come into the breath, then we can invoke this dimension of awareness, which he calls Surat. And this awareness is not the mind, it's something different from the mind. And when we come into this dimension of awareness, then the practice will take you. So then you just need to take the first step. You don't need to chart out the whole way, in advance.
He also talks about Shabd, which again I found very fascinating and a little esoteric to understand.
Yes. Yeah. So Shabd, it occurs in many, many traditions, in the Hindu tradition, in the Sikh tradition, in the Islamic and Christian traditions also. This sound, everyone talks about the sound. So by Shabd, or the word, what is meant is sound. It's not a word from language, not that kind of word, but word as in sound. And this refers to Anhadnad, or the primordial sound, from which, so that is a kind of vibration from which the whole universe is created. So yeah, it is quite esoteric. One doesn't need to go into it with the mind, but once we begin to practice, as he says, once you begin to practice with your breath and go into yourself, then we start getting connected with this Shabd. The Surat, which is the individual awareness or attention, starts getting connected with this cosmic energy or cosmic sound. You can call it by any name, but that's what he means by Shabd.
And also he says that the Shabd can be considered as a guru.
Yes, because that is the ultimate truth. So even a human guru is just an incarnation or a representation of that truth. The guru is also important or powerful because he or she channels that truth, not because that person is superior.
Okay, coming now to the social aspect of his messages. Uh, it was also, in a way, because of the life he led. He was a simple man, he was uneducated, he did not believe in religions. And for him, caste or lineage did not matter, rich or poor did not matter. So,
Hmm.
one is an example through his life, and the other is what he wrote about social issues. Yeah. So, how do you relate to that, and what are those messages?
Yeah, so he's a very critical figure. So I quite enjoy the interrogative gaze that he brings upon society, his critical gaze that he brings upon social practices and power relations and hierarchies, and he calls out hypocrisy a lot. Uh, so this we see in his time as in our times, and he says you don't need to rely on the scripture. In his time, the most powerful people were the religious authorities,
Hmm.
and he says you don't need to rely on the scripture or the priest or the temple or the mosque, because you can access this truth directly. So he's not only saying to people that you don't need the scripture or you don't need to go to the temple. He's not only saying that. It's not only a negative message. He's saying something more than that. He's saying that that truth is available to you directly in your own self, and that truth will make you powerful. So it's a social critique which is uh, actually, I feel, more powerful than the kinds of social critique that we are used to, where we just criticize what is wrong. He criticizes what is wrong. He criticizes the Pandit and the Mullah and the caste hierarchies and the ritualism. He criticizes all of this. But at the same time, he's always telling you that you don't need to those things. You don't need to fall prey to any of these things. You have power within you. You have the power of love. You have the power of truth within you. And this kind of social critique is actually more threatening, uh, because then the power brokers realize, oh, the people are not in thrall of them, because we are constantly expecting other people to do something for us. And he says, you don't need anyone to do anything for you. You have all this immense power in yourself.
These social messages, do you think that, have you seen evidence of it being used directly for by people to face oppression, or is
Yes,
it that just through singing his songs people have imbibed it in their consciousness?
it's both. So like the tradition that has survived, a lot of it was kept alive by lower caste people and singers, not by upper caste people and singers. And those people have kept this alive because Kabir was one of them. He himself refers to his, he was a weaver, so he refers to his low caste quite often in his own poetry. And so people of so-called lower caste, they have kept Kabir alive, and they have used, or used is not a good word, but they have sort of channeled this power of Kabir to come into their own strength. So it gives them strength and both solace. They don't use it to organize themselves. That is not how poetry and music is used. But then I think it flows in other ways. They don't use directly the poetry to make a social thing, but in social protests, in moments of social, even today, you go to social protests, Kabir is being sung there.
Okay.
But also these people, people who sing Kabir, they channel this power in their own lives, and that gives them strength to then face oppression in different ways.
And also on behalf of others or represent others.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
In the end, can you encapsulate for us who is Kabir and how we should be looking at him?
I think Kabir is a force. It's a powerful force, a river which has flowed for over 500 years in this country. And the people of this country have embodied this force. They are Kabir, as they say. I am Kabir when I sing Kabir. And this power is what has kept this tradition alive. And if we embody this power and this message in our own lives, I think social transformation will follow.
And which is your favorite song or poem of Kabir?
But there's so many. I don't have any one
Yeah.
particular favorite, but I'll share one which I really like. It's also a well-known song, and this song Kabir says, "Mohe sun sun aave hasi, pani mein meen piyasi." I laugh when I hear that the fish is thirsty in water, meaning we are surrounded by fulfillment. Still, we feel we are lacking. There is something missing, and we keep looking for this thing.
And
You want me to sing?
Yeah, that would be wonderful if you could sing it.
I'll sing a small part of it.
Yeah.
With the instrument.
Yeah, I've heard your concerts. They are really very deep and enjoyable.
मोहे सुन सुन आवे आसी संतो पानी में आसी मोहे सुन सुन आवे आसी संतो पानी में आसी आत्म ज्ञान मिनारे न भटके को मथुरा को काशी निर्गाना भी कस्तूरी बसके निर्गाना भी कस्तूरी बसके है अरे भाई बन बन फिरत उदासी संत पानी में आसी मोहे सुन सुन आवे आसी संत पानी में आसी.
That was beautiful.
Thank you.
So, on that beautiful note, Vipul, thank you for being with us here today and being part of Books and Us podcast.
Thank you.
Would you like to share some contact details?
Well, people can find me on Instagram. My handle is rikhi.vipul, rikhi.vipul, or Facebook, or by email. My website is vipulrikhi.com. So my email is available there.
Thank you so much for being with us, Vipul. Thank you so much.
See you.
Okay. That was Vipul Rikhi talking about his book, Drunk on Love, The Life, Vision and Songs of Kabir, published by Harper Collins. Well, listeners, thank you for listening to this 10th episode of Books and Us. Do let us know what you thought of this episode. You can leave a message or write to us at podcast@ramonproductions.org. That is RAMONPRODUCTIONS.org. Well, thank you for listening. Until next time, goodbye and take care.